Rose is alive. Rose is alive. I was like, she's peeked out of the corner. Maybe she was in the first episode. Maybe I didn't see her. But yeah, the moment that she kind of peeked her head out and she said 666, I was like, oh, hey, Rose is alive. Apparently her training process is really quick. I don't know. They kind of insinuate this idea that, again, Claire won the Bushin Festival and immediately they go out to hunt vampires. So I don't think there was that much of a time gap between the first season and the second season, but apparently Rose went through her training like that. She went to the Shadow Garden, they assigned her a number, they probably had her punch a couple things, and they're like, okay, you're good to go, get out in the field. She's still being watched by the same two girls that I think they had the same exact pose in the first season of one of them with chicken in her mouth and the other one grabbing on them. But yeah, that was cool to see Rose. Apparently she's not stuck in boot camp for the next, I don't know, season. Which again, kind of is against what I was kind of hoping for from the end of the first season. This idea of seeing the internal walkthrough of how they maybe train the Shadow Garden members. Maybe they go through this particular type of training process before they hit out. Which apparently, again, is not the case. And it seems to be a bad thing because Beta's like, crap, I have to babysit this girl who's acting out of line. Now, granted, the Shadow Garden girls don't all act the same, but they all kind of stay in line, minus Delta, who constantly has to get told what to do. But they're all mostly seemingly in line with whatever Beta and Alpha are doing, or at least the hierarchy of the power system within the Shadow Garden. But anyhow, it was good to see her. I was happy to see her. She's obviously still kind of caught up in Sid and wants to protect him. But yeah. But man, what an information dump episode. There was like so much stuff in the second episode of the second season. Honestly, just kind of getting into this backstory of Elizabeth, the Queen of Vampires, the Blood Queen, which honestly, I kind of seen the whole thing with Mary coming from like a mile away. This ancient vampire hunter, which yes, to the credit, I don't remember actually looking to see if her ears were elven. But the assumption there was that she was a vampire. I assume that she was a vampire. I don't remember exactly what it was that was kind of indicating it, but I think it's more the fact that she's ancient. She's been hunting vampires, and typically with these stories of these people that have this hatred for vampires, it's typically because they are vampire. Or they were betrayed by a vampire, they were bit by a vampire, they were turned into a vampire, and now they want to kill their master so they can be not a vampire anymore. It's a common trope. It's fine. Not saying it's a bad thing they're including in this story. It's just something I was kind of assuming was going to come. Now, the reveal of it was great. Technically, the big reveal was that Juggernaut was calling her a bat. But no, the main confirmation reveal in the idea that she kisses Claire, gets a little bit of a blood transformation through the mouth was great. I was like, okay, I need some blood. And she goes over and I'm like, okay, she's gonna bite Claire. No, we're gonna do a kiss, because why not? Because Yuri, why not? Everybody was wanting it. We all gonna give it to you. Like I said in the first episode, I kind of like this pairing of Mary and Claire. It's great to have another, again, pairing to kind of focus on, besides the previous season was mostly around Rose and Natsume and all that kind of stuff. But it was a nice introduction to the whole thing. But yes, the story of the vampires itself, I think is fine. I think it's a really solid kind of opening for the Blood Queen. I'm really hoping that when she does come to being resurrected or whatever by Crimson, if she does, I'm assuming so, because they're going through all this effort to making her art and all that kind of stuff, so obviously she's going to come back. But I thought it was a cool kind of story. It's not like super in-depth, but yes, a great little story, the idea of having this vampire that wanted to coexist with the humans. They gave up their thirst for blood, or they gave up blood to live amongst the humans. Now, the cool thing is here, and a very unique thing that I don't think I've ever really seen in a story for vampires, is the idea of a vampire that once they give up the blood, yes, in most cases, they do become weaker. They lose their power. Their power is from consuming that blood, and thus that's what makes them want to keep consuming it. It's either a thirst or it's a desire for power. But to have it a case where giving it up not only just weakens them, but also makes them more human. That was the oddity thing that I don't think I've ever really had in another story. This idea that once they gave up the blood, everybody was following Elizabeth, they were living amongst the humans, everybody was happy, they were able to stand out in the sun again. Now, the tragedy here is the fact that Elizabeth was never able to. And it seems like that's mainly the idea that it seems like that is a focus of the beginning line. So I think it's the progenitors. The vampires of the highest tier. Everybody under them, they created vampires under them, their children basically, are able to essentially revert back to human because they were once human. Which makes me assume that Elizabeth is obviously one that is 100% vampire. She's not part human. She wasn't changed from a human to vampire. So she can't, over time, with the absence of blood, revert back to pretty much being a human. And that's the sad thing. That's the tragedy really in the story, is this idea that she wanted to create this heaven. She wanted to create this place where human and vampires can be alike. And I think that's why she eventually creates heaven, is because she was never going to be able to become so close to the humans like the other ones were. And so she had to create a place where they can be side by side. But unfortunately, this thing that happens apparently every 1,000 years, this red moon, is what kind of screws it all up and unfortunately turns to tragedy, which I kind of wish they presented that a little better. This is something that obviously can be very, very sad, very, very traumatic to kind of present, and it didn't really feel like it was that there was much emotion put into it. And you could probably chop that up to the idea that, again, Eminence in Shadow is not a drama. It is not a heavy drama show. It's not about psychological horror and stuff like that and all that kind of stuff. It's a comedy action show. And so even though this is a very heavy subject, it's a very sad story, they're not going to really hit on it that hard. But it still doesn't keep it from being kind of sad. That's just like in the first season when they had the whole situation with the doctor experimenting on the kids and stuff like that, and the one that kind of sacrificed herself for, I don't have her on my list right now. I remade my list. There was a sacrifice in the first season, and it was kind of that sad aspect of that. This idea that somebody was still in there. And again, it was a callback to a daughter that they kind of mentioned before. Again, Eminence in Shadow doesn't really want to dwell in that stuff, even though there is an opportunity there. But still, it was a sad story, and this idea, this girl that wanted to create this place for everybody to come together and live together, but then she ends up destroying it herself because she couldn't control her own innate desires, and that is to feed on blood. And she massacred a bunch of people, and then eventually ended her own life because she destroyed the one thing that she wanted to create. But unfortunately, she can't die. She did not turn to ash, even though she wanted to kill herself. And Mary was supposed to watch over her. Crimson comes in and betrays her, steals away the queen, and has been wanting to resurrect her ever since, waiting for the next red moon. So yeah, it was a solid little story. And like I said, unfortunately not really banked on too much for the emotion, but again, kind of expected for this series. I will have to admit, as per usual, even though I was pretty cool on him in the first episode, already getting tired of the Sid's joke this time around. It's mainly around that joke that I laughed about in the first episode. It's like, oh yeah, him popping up everywhere and saying the same lines over and over again like a robot because he thinks it's so super cool. And then by the end of this episode, I'm like, I'm just tired of it. We're already killing the joke again. I think they sort of did this in the first season, but this writer likes to kill jokes. But hopefully it's done now, because technically he's obliterated Crimson. I'm sure Crimson's not dead, but still, it's like this whole thing of like, I gotta time it just perfectly because the hero is gonna come there, the main protagonist, and they gotta see me defeat the bad guy. And he comes in there and just blasts it, like, oh wait, was it time? I think that's what he's basically insinuating. He's like, oh crap, was the time right? I think it's kind of funny, this idea of like, it's time to resurrect the queen, going through the whole process, doing the ritual that I think of giving her flesh from this person. You're gonna be my bride, and then just Sid blasts it, which again is the joke. It's kind of the one punch man thing that they kind of adopted into the series. There was kind of one interesting scene when Sid went into this treasury room and started kind of being picky about what he wanted to take from them, and he kind of just settled on just getting all the gold. And he mentioned this idea that this won't be enough gold to last me for the 300 years that I plan on living. Like, I guess Sid has figured out some way of manipulating his body, or I don't know, using his slime or something like that to manipulate how he's going to age. And apparently he's expecting to live for at least 300 years, which is kind of interesting because it does seem like there's a lot of emphasis in this world that there is limitations on lifespans. I mean, that's the whole point in why Claire essentially figures out that Mary is possibly something else, because how would she live that long? But on the reverse end, it seems like Claire is indicating the fact that she might possibly one day turn into a monster, which does kind of play into the first episode. Like I was mentioning, seemed to be an emphasis that Claire was trying to get Sid to do something, to achieve something, to go someplace in his life before she dies. So it does kind of indicate that, yes, I don't remember if this was actually played out in the first season. I don't remember it being in the first season, but it seemed to indicate that Claire went through the same thing that everybody else did. This kind of change in her body, manner, whatever, probably deformed herself. Sid was able to tap it away, and she's afraid that it's going to happen again. She's going to turn into a monster. And before then, she wants to make sure that Sid, goes to somewhere. Now, the opposite end is, yes, that could be the case, but I wonder if it's also kind of a misdirect, and that, yes, Claire could possibly at least have an indication that she's an isekai. Again, my theory was the idea that the girl from the first episode of the first season was possibly an isekai that came into Claire. And I assume that she knew who she was, and that's why she was obsessed with Sid, because Sid saved her in a previous life, all that kind of stuff. But I don't know. We'll see. It was kind of sad to get an indication in this episode that they will find a cure. All the goals and stuff like that, they will eventually find a cure, because yes, the most annoying character in the entire series is a goal, and they cannot not have him get cured because this writer likes that joke and it's annoying. So we'll see. Anyways, cool episode, and of course the best part of this episode is we see the return of the ED art cards, which are always super spicy, and I super like them. So glad to see those getting a return. This particular one, liking it just for that oob, as I call it, the under chest, which I've always enjoyed. I'm a fan of it, so don't judge me. But until the next episode, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, make sure that like button down below, comment, let me know what you thought of the episode. Additionally, if you're new to the channel, make sure that subscribe button so you get all my content and news reviews, first impressions, top list. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, if you like this content and you want to support the channel more, I have a Patreon link, tips link, super thanks, membership button down below. Greatly appreciate what it does, and y'all take care.